Okay, so I repeat again. As I told you, so morphology, there are many things to be covered. Okay, many things to be covered. That's why I thought it would be better to divide the lecture on morphology into two parts. So I did that last time with phonology, but it was possible to cover the two parts for phonology into one lecture. But for morphology, I think we should have two lectures and two classes, one part in one class. Okay. So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to try to discuss, okay, and talk about the following aspects of morphology. So first thing we will cover is talk about the types, okay, of words. Try to see the types of words. What are they? Okay. And then we'll try to start a definition of what is morpheme. You remember last time when we talked about phonology, we said that the minimal unit of analysis for phonology is the phoneme. Okay? Then for morphology, the minimal unit of analysis is the morpheme. So we'll try to see what is the morpheme. Okay? Try to understand and give a definition of what is a morpheme. But the definition, let me tell you this, the definition of morpheme and the understanding of what is a morpheme, okay, we will have to finish all the first part, in order to really come to grasp what we mean by a morpheme, okay? But we will start a definition there, and then we will continue talking about a morpheme throughout the other headlines of this lecture. Then we're going to talk about the types of morphemes that we have. There are two types of morphemes. There are bound morphemes and free morphemes. What are the bound morphemes and what are the free morphemes? And then we're going to talk about morphological analysis. Because what is the purpose of morphology? Is to do a morphological analysis of words and morphemes in a language, in a given language. So we will try to understand what are the main steps. You remember last time for phonology, we said that there are a number of steps and discovery procedures and criteria to follow in order to do a phonological analysis of sounds. So the same thing is applicable for morphological analysis. There are a number of things that we have steps to follow. So we will try to talk about what we mean by PDE there. It simply means present day English. We're going to use it as an example for explaining the different steps of morphological analysis. Because you can do morphological analysis not only for English, for Moroccan Arabic, for Tamazight, for whatever kind of language existing in the world. But for you, in order to understand these steps, we'll just take this one, which everybody understands. I don't understand a lot of some other languages. So, present-day English, then morphological analysis, we have to determine and identify the types of morphs and morphemes. There are morphs and there are morphemes, like phonemes and allophones. So it's something similar, a little bit. And this will help us understand better a definition of what is a morpheme. So we'll talk about the types of morphs. Then we will talk about the first step in morphological analysis, which is phonemic representation. That's the first step that we have to do. Okay, we take the data and then we have to do this. And then the second step is isolation of affixes. Okay, we will say what we mean by affixes, and we will talk about what we mean by isolation of affixes. Then, third step is find out, determine the kinds of alternation rules, because in morphology, there are rules, okay? There are rules. So we are going to talk about what we mean, what are these alternation rules, okay? And we will see examples, of course, on the basis of present-day English again, right? Finally, we are going to finish as a preparation for the next part of the second part of lecture, okay, on morphology. We will start talking about what we mean by affixes and the different types of affixes, and also how we coin new words and the different ways we coin new words, because this will prepare us for the next lectures, which will be talking about derivational rules and derivation in morphology, compounding in morphology, and so on and so forth. Okay? So these are the headlines for today's lecture. So we're going to try to see each one in a bit of detail. Okay, so far? So, types of words. This is one way, one thing we have to know about words and morphology. There are two types of words. There are variable words. Variable words, which means that these words change. Okay, they change. Okay, and then the next category is invariable words. These invariable words, they of course don't change. This is one way of categorizing words in morphology. Okay. Now, for example, you have a number of words in here. You have woman, but, myself, sweet, walk, about, if. Now, woman, do you think it is variable or invariable? Variable, because you can have singular and then you can have a plural. But, invariable. Myself, invariable. Myself. Never you have myself, okay? If you want to have something else, plural, you have another word, ourselves. That's a different word. Okay? Then we have walk. Variable, walked, walking. Okay? About, and variable, etc. So those are examples. So which can be classified into categories. You have the variable words. You have them there: woman, sweet, and walk. And then you have the invariable words, okay? The invariable, and the invariable words usually includes the pronouns, okay? This category, the relative pronouns, okay? All types of pronouns in English, okay? Yes, they have a grammatical function. Yes, you basically have a grammatical, okay, function. So this is one way of looking at words from a morphological perspective, okay? Look at words this way. Another way of looking at words and classifying words is that you have to look at, you have closed items, okay? We have closed items, okay? And then closed items, what do we mean by closed items? It means small substitution sets whose principal function is grammatical, okay? They change slowly over time. It's similar to the invariable words. So I told you that there are different ways of categorizing words in morphology. Okay? So we have seen the first way, which is variable and invariable. Another way of classifying words is to have them as closed sets, like this, closed sets. It means small substitution sets whose principal function is grammatical, like he, a, on, be. All those grammatical words you can have prepositions, articles, etc. Open sets items, example play, replay. These are large substitution sets, carry meaning, and rapid turnover. Open, it means that you can have many, infinite. Okay, they are infinite. But the closed set items, they are closed. You have a number of them, and that's it, okay? This is the first characteristic for closed items. Another characteristic is that they change slowly over time. Okay, if you want to look at the languages throughout time, these category of closed set items, they change slowly, not very quickly, okay? But on the other side, open set items, they do change, okay, quickly, tend to change quickly over time. And also, they are open, infinite. You can have many words in there because of this process we're going to talk about later called derivation. Okay, because of derivation, compounding, you can have and create number of words. And we're going already to see these ways of coining new words in the last slides. We're going to talk about word coinage. We're going to talk about suffixes and word coinage. Okay? So this is another way of classifying words into in morphology, and each one has got its own meaning, okay? Its own sense, it has its own usefulness. First categorization, it shows you one basic feature of each category. One is variable, the other one is invariable. Here we have other features. You can have closed set and you can have open set. Closed sets are small, they are finite, and they change slowly over time. The other ones, and they have usually only grammatical functions, okay, whose principal function is grammatical. While open set items, they are open. That's why they are called open. You can have meaning, and then they carry meaning. They have a meaning, semantic meaning. Okay, semantics. We're talking about semantics, and also they change quickly over time. So this is another way of categorizing types of words in morphology, right? Now, let's see what we can how can define a morpheme and how it is defined. Morpheme is defined as minimal bearing meaning element. And let me tell you again here, I'm using the same references as I told you last time, your main book, okay, which you have, Linguistics by Oxford. I'm also using some video tutorials that are online done by the Virtual Linguistic Campus from a German university, okay? In addition to other references, which I introduced in the first lecture of this course. So, morpheme is the minimal bearing meaning elements, okay? If you look at phoneme, it is the smallest unit of analysis, but it doesn't have a meaning, okay? For these ones, they do have a meaning, okay? For example, you can have man, it's a morpheme, okay? It's a morpheme, and it has a meaning, okay? So, that's what we mean by minimal bearing meaning element. It's an element of language which is very minimal, that is small, but it has got a meaning. Okay? Like man, okay, etc. So this is a definition of a morpheme. So we have to remember it out this way. Fold, and other types of words you can have. But throughout the lecture, you will understand more the morpheme. Another way of classifying or categorizing morphemes, in morphology, we can have two types as well: bound morphemes and free morphemes. So the free morphemes, they are morphemes that can stand alone as words. Okay, they are morphemes. They can stand alone. They can stand alone. For example, when you say a man, you can say fold, you can say book, you can say whatever morpheme word, okay, that can stand alone. It's a free morpheme, okay? There is another type of morpheme which is called bound morphemes, and these morphemes only function as parts of words. They only function as parts of words. They don't stand alone, okay? For example, if you take how do we make the opposite for adjectives? We can use an. An alone doesn't work, doesn't stand. Okay? It only functions as part of other words. Okay? Good? Now, for example, the adverbs. How do we make adverbs? By adding ly at the end. Now, the ly in itself, it's a morpheme. But it's a bound morpheme. Why? Because it can't stand alone. You can never say li, and people will understand what you are talking about. Now, you have to put it at the end of other words in order to stand. For example, you say quickly, okay? Slowly, you add it usually to adjectives in order to stand, okay? So when you do it this way, it's correct. But if you just say li, no, doesn't work. The past tense ed of the past tense. Does it stand alone? Ed. Okay, it. You say it or it, whatever. No, it doesn't stand alone. Okay? So it's a bound morpheme. It has to be attached to another word in order to have a meaning and to stand correctly. So therefore you can say walked. That's correct. I can accept you when I hear you saying this word ed at the end of walk. I can understand you, and I can tell it's correct. We can go together. Okay. Now those are again two types of morphemes. The free morphemes, they are the morphemes that can stand alone. You have many. Okay. Bold, slow, quick, clever, walk, whatever. Okay. And then you have those bound morphemes that you say they have to be attached, and usually these ones have grammatical functions, okay? Grammatical functions like past tense ed, like third person singular, like third person plural, like the S of the plural, okay? Yes. And so many others. For example, here we have man. Now, you are happy with that. It's okay. Okay, so this one, but the li at the end, you have to put it after man in order to stand as meaningful word, morpheme. Or an, okay, and manly, okay, and manly. So man is free, and li or an, they are bound. Why? Because they have to be attached to a word or morpheme in order to stand as correct and meaningful. Okay? So free morphemes and bound morphemes. Okay? And from the term itself, you can understand the meaning. When you say free, it means freedom. Okay? Use it without problem. But bound, you have to attach it. It has to attach to something, to a word, in order to have a meaning. In order to expand further the types of bound morphemes and free morphemes. So bound morphemes, you can have many examples of bound morphemes. Okay? Like derivational morphemes. For example, an. The adverbs li, etc. Derivational morphemes are morphemes which, when co-joined with another morpheme, form a new word. If you take bound morphemes, there are types as well of bound morphemes. One of them is called derivational morphemes. And we're going to see in the next slide the second type of derivational morphemes. Okay, so there are subcategories. You have the categories bound, free. Forget about free. Now let's go with bound. Bound, it has got subcategories. So first subcategory is what we call derivational morphemes. And these derivational morphemes are the morphemes, okay, which you use in order to derive new words. For example, man, manly, and manly, okay? Slow, slowly. So you use these derivational morphemes in order to create new words. This is one example. So let's see. So for example, often this involves the changing of the grammatical category. When we do this, we add derivational morphemes. Usually, it changes the grammatical category. For example, you have the word we have seen before, man. And then we add li. At the end, the first one, man, is a noun. But when you put li, it becomes an adjective, not an adverb, man, li. Okay? So, it changes the grammatical category. So this is one of the roles, one of the effects, one of the influences of using derivational morphemes. Usually, we have this, okay? So, but sometimes you don't have, okay? It depends. But usually we have a change in grammatical category. For example, and also, when we have a combination of bound free morpheme, derivation morpheme with a free morpheme like we're going to see here. Look at this one. We have this, grace. It's a word. It's a noun. Grace. Okay? And it is called the stem or the root. That's the stem or the root, the original word. And then from this word, we can add derivational morphemes, okay? And which will result in deriving new words with the new grammatical categories, okay? With new grammatical categories. So, grace here, let's see what happens. So we have graceful, okay? So no more a noun, now it becomes an adjective because we have added derivational morpheme full. Let's continue with the same word. Disgraceful, we are adding, but here we don't add, we have graceful, it's an adjective, and when we do disgraceful, it's an adjective. So as I told you before, if you add derivational form, usually we have new grammatical categories. Noun becoming adjective, or adjective becoming adverb. But sometimes there is no change in grammatical category as in this example here. We can continue again. gracefully, and gracefulness, and so on and so forth. So you have the creation, derivation of new words. Now we continue. Bound morphemes, another category type of bound morphemes. In addition to the derivational morphemes, we have the inflectional morphemes. Inflectional morphemes. What do we mean by inflectional morphemes? They change the grammatical form of a word, but not its word class or central meaning. Okay? It changes only the grammatical form of the word, but doesn't change the word class or the meaning. Example. We have here two examples, which are fish and loud. We are going to take two examples here. Fish, and we are going to add to it inflectional morphemes, and the same thing for loud. So let's see. So here fish, we can add the inflectional morpheme past tense ed. Okay? Past tense ed. Past tense ed is a kind of inflectional morpheme. Okay? So it doesn't change the grammatical category, right? It's a verb and it stays a verb, right? But the tense changes. The tense changes. Okay? Yes. Another one, fish, and then we add the third person singular. Fish, he fishes. Okay? Or something. Okay? So if the third person singular in present simple tense, okay, when we have he and she, we add s. Here, because we have fish, we have to add es. Okay? So es again, or s as such, it's an inflectional morpheme. You see? It keeps the same word, but just gives another meaning. Okay? Some kind of grammatical meaning to the word. So fish, when we add ed, it adds the grammatical meaning of past tense to it. Okay? And then when we put s or es, it adds the grammatical meaning that we are talking about he or she. Okay? So it's an inflectional morpheme. Another example, using loud. Loud, this is the stem or the root. And then we are going to add to it other types of inflectional morphemes, like adjective superlatives, comparatives, and superlatives. So we have loud there. It's the same word, same adjective, same meaning, but simply it adds some little more meaning to it, okay? And then loudest as another example. So this is what we mean by inflectional morphemes, okay? Inflectional morphemes. In Arabic we have a lot, okay? Yeah. Okay, we have a lot of this, cases, okay? Case, marking, okay? Ishtiqaq, that's derivational morphemes. Okay, when we talk about ishtiqaq, derivational morphemes. But I'm talking here about i'rab, tensing, okay, tenses and so on. Morphological analysis. So the next step I talk about is morphological. Start talking about what we call as morphological analysis. And as I told you, I'm going to rely as examples. I'm going to rely on present day English, okay? Present day English for clarity for you, because you are belonging to a department of English. So we start with this, and then when you go into advanced level, you will go into more examples from Arabic, Amazigh, and so on, okay? And so, you see, this reminds you of something? Something similar to what we have seen in phonology. So the same thing, so phonological analysis. Okay, just a little short recapitulation. In phonological analysis, we try to determine the phoneme and the different types of phonemes, or the different types of allophones belonging to the same phoneme. Same thing is applicable for morphology. Okay, we're going to try to determine what is a morpheme and what are the different types of morphemes. And also, if we have a morpheme, we're going to see the different variants, which are called morphs or allomorphs. Okay. And just a little bit of formality here to draw your attention to it. Pay attention to the formalities. Last time when we were talking about phonology, phonetics we use brackets, and phonemes we use slashes. Okay? So for the morphemes and the allomorphs, we use morpheme curly brackets. You know curly brackets, like what you have here. We call them curly brackets. Okay? And then for the allomorphs, we use curly brackets and inside slashes. Okay? So this is what you're going to try to do and how to do it. What are the different steps to follow in order to come to these conclusions, okay, in morphology. So first thing we have to explain here is what we mean by morpheme and allomorphs, okay? So for example, here we have some examples, okay? So we have 3 examples. We have walks, misleads, and classroom, okay? Now, we have to do this, okay, in order to try to determine the morphemes and allomorphs, okay? We have to do what we call phonemic representation, phonetic transcription. Phonemic representation, phonetic transcription, the pronunciation of the different sounds. We have to determine that. That's the basis. I told you last time, when talked about phonetics, that it's a major class. It's a major component of general linguistics. It's on the basis of which everything can be understood. Phonology, morphology, syntax, and so on and so forth. Okay? Now, this is how it is phonemically represented. So we have walks, then misleads, and then classroom. And then you can see there some boundaries, because when we are doing morphologically, I'm already introducing you here to the formalities of doing morphological analysis. How do we determine between the morphemes? Separate between the morphemes in one word via using what we call boundaries, the hashtag. You see the hashtag there? It's a hashtag, you know, hashtag. Okay, this one, like this. So that determines the boundary, okay? Where the word stops, and then we have morphemes attached to it, okay? To differentiate between the different morphemes in one word, okay? For example, you have here walk, the verb walk, and then you have S, third person singular S for the present tense. He walks, she walks, right? So, first of all, I do walks, like that, and then I start cutting the word, like cutting, okay? And we're going to see that this is the next step for morphological analysis. It's called isolation of affixes. We're going to see it later on when we talk about step 1, step 2, and 3, right? Misleads, then you have misleads. Then here it's also separated into 3. You have leads, is the stem or the root, lead, the verb lead. And then we attach to it one derivational morpheme, which is mislead, because when we attach mis to a word, we create a new word. It's a derivational morpheme. And then we attach to it at the end an inflectional morpheme, which is here the third person singular again, similar to walks. Okay? So you separate between those morphemes using hashtag. It's the boundary. Okay? The last one is classroom. It's again divided into 2 because we have 2 words there. Okay? Class, room. You have class and then room. Okay? And these we have 2 free morphemes attached together in order to create a new word. You see how the different ways how we can create words. Either you can create words by adding bound morphemes like miss, like this, like ness, li, etc. Or by adding another free morpheme, like in this one. Classroom, it's a combination of 2 free morphemes. Room, it's one word, free morpheme, and class, right? Now, again, this is a recap of the types of morphemes we have there. So we can, from this analysis, from this phonemic representation, from this phonetic transcription here, we can determine the free morphemes, which are class, room, walk, lead. Okay? And please pay attention to the formalities. You see the curly brackets in there? Because we are talking about morphemes. So it's a morpheme is we use curly brackets in order to identify a morpheme. And then the other category, which we can take from these example walks, misleads, and classroom, are the bound morphemes. We have the third person singular S, third person singular Z, Z, and then miss, which is a bounce derivational morpheme, miss, okay? And also pay attention to the formalities there. You see here, this means it comes at the end of the morpheme. This one comes at the end of the morpheme, and this one comes at the beginning or before the morpheme. Okay, that's why you have the underscore here, right? The hyphen, like a hyphen, dash in there. Okay, give you a little bit of time to take notes if you wish, but still you are going to have all this later on, as I usually do. Okay. So you see how we can come to finding morphs, allomorphs, and then. But this is just a beginning, okay? It's just the first, okay, the beginning. There are still more things to come, okay? Good. So we continue, okay? Now, using what we have seen in this previous slide, we can come up with this, because you notice that, walks, we say walks, and then the other one, we say, okay? Can you remind me that? Yes? Misleads, you see? So here, we are trying to go into the direction of finding the morpheme and the allomorphs, because we have one thing here. We have third person singular S, but in one word, when it is attached to one morpheme, it is pronounced S, and when it is attached to another morpheme, it is pronounced Z. So we are already going for the direction of finding the morpheme and then its different allomorphs. Okay, so this is it. Okay, we can find it is pronounced like S, or pronounced like Z, or pronounced like is with some words. Okay, so these are the allomorphs. Okay, these all of them, they are the third person singular. We use them when we are putting the verbs in third person singular with he and she. Okay. Now, you see how the morphological analysis is going on? Now, I say it is pronounced se, like in the first one there. Where is it pronounced se? Where? In what kind of environment is it pronounced se? So I have to determine here, like this. Okay, you see the boundary here? It is pronounced here, this is it, se, it is put here, and then after a voiceless sound. When we have a word or a morpheme finishing with a voiceless sound, like walk, the verb walk, ke is minus voice, it's voiceless. So when we put s next to it, he and she, it has to be pronounced voiceless as well. Okay, so this is the environment where we have to. Okay, but it is pronounced z, it becomes voiced. Where, in what kind of environment? When we put it after a voiced sound, like misleads. The at the end is voiced, is plus voice. So the z is pronounced z, misleads. Okay? And finally, it is pronounced is, okay? When we have a word or a morpheme finishing with yes, s, sh, z, sorry, s, z, sh, and j. Okay? S, z, sh, and j. So these are the environments, the different types of environments we can have. So these are the different types of things we can find out when we do phonemic representation. When we take the data, okay, and then we do the phonetic transcription, we find that I have something here, one thing here, but it is pronounced differently. Sometimes it is minus voice, sometimes it's pronounced voiced, sometimes it's pronounced is. Why? So I have, when doing morphological analysis, I have to tell why. So it is pronounced after minus voice, it's pronounced after voice, plus voice, and its pronouns is after s, z, sh, and j. Okay? And look at the formalities. Remember the formalities there, please. The allomorphs, you see how the allomorphs are represented? Curly brackets, and then you have the slashes, and then you have the underscore there, the dash. Okay? Now, we have to determine, so we have something like the morpheme, one morpheme, and this morpheme is pronounced in 3 different ways. So we have, these are the 3 different ways, z, z, and is. So we have to tell what is the morpheme, okay? How are we going to do that? So, for the moment, just keep it like this, okay? It is z, z. That's the morpheme. Why? Simply because, I'm going to come back to this later on, because the voice sounds in English are the more common, are the more general. Okay? If you look at the consonants in English, and if you look at the vowels in English, they are most of them generally, the tendency goes for voiced sounds. For example, vowels, all of them are voiced. A, E, all of them, they are voiced. Vowels by nature, they are all of them voiced. And then the consonants go. G, G, D, B, M, N. Okay, and so j, and so on and so forth. So, if you take these two, it seems that the tendency is a voiced sound. So therefore, we're going to take the morpheme, the original sound or morpheme there is z, this one. Here you have it z here, okay, and you have a dash here. That's the, and then you have curly brackets. And this morpheme is pronounced, okay, in these 3 different ways. So there we can talk about morpheme and the allomorphs. Okay? Morpheme is the Z there. And then it is pronounced differently in 3 different ways, in 3 different environments. Okay? And I have to remind you here of something which you have seen in phonological analysis. You remember complementary distribution? Complementary distribution, it means that one doesn't occur in the position of the other. Can you look here again at these positions? The S never occurs here. The is never occurs here or here. The Z never occurs here or here. Okay? So, complementary distribution. There should be some complementary distribution for this. Okay? It's one criterion to pay attention to when trying to determine these, okay, rules, this morphological analysis. Okay? So already this is again just an introduction, but I'm going to stop again at each step. Again, I'm going to do the same thing, but in a bit of detail with each step. Because in this, I have talked about phonemic representation, I have talked about isolation of affixes, and I have talked about alternation rules, determining the alternation rules. Okay? So I'm going to stop at each one in the following slides. Let me just tell this before I go on into the next steps. In this analysis that are going to be introduced to you, you will have examples. This is another area which we're going, if we have time, we can see later on, concatenative and concatenative operations. Okay? So I'm going to not deal with non-concatenative operations. What do we mean by non-concatenative operations? It means like some examples like woman, women, mouse, mice. What you have here, we have some changes in morphological changes in them. But they are different from the S and so on. Okay? You have the word changing, and they are not general, they are just exceptional. We call these types of operations non-concatenative operations. I'm not going to talk about that. Okay? But instead, I will talk and focus more on the similar examples we have seen in the previous slide, and those are concatenative operations. Concatenative operations, those which are general and which involve a change, a clear change. Okay? Not exceptional. Okay, for example, by adding affixes. Okay, usually we add affixes. Cat become cats. Like third person singular, walk, walks, misleads, etc. Okay, so this is just to draw your attention to this. I'm not going to refer to those kinds of examples there. Now, first thing we do. So this is the normal data as we use it. Normal data as we use it. This is how we use it. Okay, we speak them and we write them. So dog, dogs, cat, cats, horse, horses, box, boxes, echo, echoes, thief, thieves, ox, oxen. Okay, and you can see here that all of them they are concatenative. Okay, I usually have problem myself pronouncing this. Okay, concatenative. Okay, concatenative operations. Okay, that's the. Here they are again for you. Okay, here they are. And all of them, you can have a look, all of them involve adding what we call affixes. We call them affixes. For the moment, just take them that way. Because later on, we are going to see that affixes are subcategorized again into three subcategories. Prefixes, suffixes, and infixes. Okay? But for the moment, take them all together as affixes. Okay? Generally. So this is, now, if we want to do morphological analysis, this is not the appropriate procedure for us to do or to follow, what we call orthographic representation, writing, simple, normal writing. We have to go and do something else, which is the first step, okay? This is a normal procedure, okay? Orthographic representation using the normal alphabets. Okay? We can understand already that there is something going on in there. Okay? We can understand, we can identify something going on in there. Like S, ES there, etc. But this is not enough. We have to go and do the first step, as we have seen in previous slides, phonemic representation. So this is the first step we have to do. Okay? Again, the same examples, but we have to do this, phonemic representation, using phonetic transcription, in other words. This is what we have to do as a first step in our morphological analysis. And how can we do that? Via referring to what we have seen in phonetics, and what we have seen also in phonology. Okay? So we try to do a phonemic or representation, okay, phonetic transcription of these, okay, words. So you can see there that it becomes clearer the differences, okay, like the Z, S, and E's, okay, and in at the end over there. And using this phonemic representation, we try to determine the morphemes. Okay, we determine the different types of morphemes in that, like Z, is, and en at the end over there, and of course the S. I shouldn't forget the S over there. So here we have a phenomenon going on. Okay, something going on in there. Okay, plural. We are talking here about the plural S. We are no more talking as an example the third person singular. We're talking here about the plural S, because plural S something is almost similar to the third person singular when we use verbs he, okay, and she, okay, S there. So we do the phonemic representation, and then we try to determine, okay, the different types of different pronunciations. Then the next step, we have to do this, what we call, and you see here that I'm just, okay, giving the details. Do isolation of those affixes. Okay, and how are we going to do that? So again, our examples, the same, using phonemic representation. And we're not going to isolate the affixes via, like we have seen here. Look, in the previous slide. What I do here is simply something which is not a formality, not a technicality. Okay? I simply underline. No. Morphological analysis, we have to use the technicalities for doing that. So that's what we're going to see now. Again, examples, and how we're going to isolate. Okay, so this is what we do for isolation first. Okay, now I try to make it clear so that there are different types of morphemes in there, pronunciations of the same morpheme there. The plural S morpheme has got different manifestations, different pronunciations. Sometimes it's pronounced S, sometimes Z, and sometimes is. And sometimes we have something else, which is for oxen. Okay? Would you like to have some time? Yes, please. You can take one example of Z, okay? Not two examples. Instead of taking all the examples for the pronunciation of Z, take one. And the same thing for E's. You can take dogs, cats, and horses, and oxen. 4 examples. Okay? Just 4 examples, because there is a repetition there. More examples for the same phenomenon. Okay, you are going to see the later on. Now we go into the next step. Okay, trying to determine the alternations or the alternation rules. What's going on here? Okay, we have to tell what's going on. We have to tell and explain why the plural S is sometimes pronounced S, sometimes Z, or sometimes is. Why? So we have to do what we call as alternation rules. Now, first of all, we try to determine what is the morpheme, like we did with phonology, to determine the phoneme and then the allophones. Same thing here. We have to determine what is could be the morpheme. What could be the morpheme? Okay, is it S or is it Z or whatever? And what are the different pronunciations? Allomorphs, right? So, in this case, as I told you before, the morpheme is Z, and it is represented that way, technically speaking. Z. And I explained to you why. Because in English, most of the sounds are voiced. Generality, the general tendency of the English language. Vowels are by nature voiced. And in addition to that, we have many alloconsonants that also voiced. So, we could draw the conclusion that the morpheme is voiced. Okay, Z. Okay, by opposition to what we know. Normally we know how. We know that it is plural S. Okay, but in morphological analysis we have a different tendency. Okay, so that's the way how things go. So this is it, and then after this we have to find out the rules. What goes on? What happens? When do we pronounce it Z? What kind of environment? When do we pronounce it Z? What kind of environment do we pronounce it Z? And when do we pronounce it is? What kind of environment do we pronounce it is? Okay? Or sometimes there is no rule. There is no change. Sorry, there is no change. Okay? Sometimes there is a change. Sometimes there is no change. For example, when we are going to see that the morpheme is Z, it is voiced. So when we talk about dogs here, there is no change because the morpheme is pronounced the same way. But we are going to say that it is pronounced differently. Z, where, and it's pronounced is where. You understand what I'm talking about? So this is what we call as normalization of base form and affixes, like determining the alternation rules and trying to tell where and what happens and where. Okay? And this kind of analysis, and it was launched by somebody called Charles Hawkins, who was the person who started all of these issues, this kind of morphological analysis, okay? It's Charles Hawkins, okay? Normalization of base form. What is the base form? It is the morpheme and the affixes or the allomorphs, okay? The different types of different pronunciations. So this is what we have to do after the phonemic representation and after the isolation of affixes. We have to provide the alternation rules. We have to tell them using the morphological technicalities. Okay. Now it's okay. Now, for example, you have okay, dog, cat, horse, etc. So these are the normal words. Okay. There are different things we have to talk about in here as well. In addition to determining the morpheme and its allomorphs, there are different ways how we do that. Okay, different ways how we do that. For example, we notice that teeth, and thieves. Okay, teeth and thieves. The stem. If we focus just on the stem. The stem. You remember what we said about what is the stem? It is the root, the normal original word. We have to, this is one way of doing morphological analysis. We look at the stem. Is there any change affecting the stem when we add affixes? So we are doing morphological analysis. So here, there are some words which don't change. There are some stems, or some roots, or some original morphemes that do not change. When in singular or plural, they are the same. For example, we have dog, dogs, dog is the same. And then cat, cats, no change. Box or whatever, horse, horses. Okay? The stem doesn't change. But there are some other words, some other morphemes, when we add the plural s, the original word or the stem or the root changes. For example, the original word is thief. And then when we add the plural s, it becomes thieves. So we have to explain this morphological analysis. We have to say the rule. Okay? What is the rule? Why is this change? Okay? So you see, there are rules, morphological rules, which you have to provide that affect the stems. You can have some stems don't change, or they change. Okay? Now this is one. Again, you have some other examples like oxen. These are some exceptions. Oxen, child, children, and some words, some examples of brother. Sometimes they also use brethren. Okay, not very common in English. Okay, so there are also here some changes. Okay, so we're not going to focus on this. Okay, we don't focus on these examples here. These examples are exceptional cases. We're going to focus on the general cases. What is the general case? S become or Z pronounced S or Z or is. Or the stem, it changes. Okay, the last sound of the stem changes, like thief, thieves. Okay? So forget about this oxen and children. And then we have to provide rules, alternation rules, for the suffixes or affixes. Okay? So we can find rules or alternations affecting the stems, or we can have rules and alternations affecting the affixes. Okay? Like the third person S itself. It's an affix. Okay? Basically, it is a suffix because it's at the end of the word. It also changes affecting it. Okay? Like we have seen in the previous examples. So the Z is pronounced, stays the same, voice, in this environment. And it is changed to S in this environment. And it is pronounced is in this environment. You see the types of alternations you can determine in morphological analysis? Okay? You can have more, I repeat again, you can have morphological rules or alternations affecting the stems themselves when we add affixes to them, like cat, etc. These ones don't change, but when there are some words like thief, thieves, it becomes the when we add the plural s to it. So the stem here changes. So you have to explain that. Morphological analysis for this. Why? Okay? Then, the other one is here. It is the morphological alternations or rules that affect the suffixes. Okay? So you have to determine between two things. The stems, the original words, and the suffixes, what we add. Okay? For example, the S, the plural S, the morpheme is Z, it becomes S after cats. It stays the same after dogs, and it changes to is in other environments after search, etc. Okay? I repeat again, please. In morphological rules or alternations, you can determine different types of morphological rules or alternations. You can have those that affect the stems themselves, and you know what we mean by stems. It means the original words, the roots. Okay? Or we can have morphological rules, alternations that affect the suffixes that we add to the roots or the stems. Okay? Like for the plural s. Now let's see how to do that. So again, here I focus on the suffix, on the morphological alternations affecting the suffix. So you have the morpheme z. Okay, that's the suffix. Specifically, it is a suffix, okay? But generally, you can call it an affix, okay? Now, this morpheme z is pronounced, okay, as z, stays the same. You see the technicalities? Be careful about the technicalities, please. You see there, that's the morpheme. Sorry, I can't reach that. But you can see at the beginning, you have the Z there, between slashes, and then there's the curly brackets. It stays, or it becomes, when you have this, it becomes. This is what we do, the technicalities we follow in morphological analysis. Instead of using the arrow, we do this way. Okay? It becomes is, or it is, in other words, it is pronounced is. Okay? We're not going to say right, it is pronounced. No, we just use symbols for that in morphological analysis. So it is pronounced is, and then you have to determine the environment. After s, z, sh, and j. You see, after, that's the boundary over there. Okay? And then, the other environment, it is pronounced s, where after a voiceless sound. After a voiceless sound, like cats. Okay? And then we can add something else, which I didn't put in there. It stays the same. There is no change. Where after a voiced sound, dogs. When we say dog, g is voiced, so it stays voiced. There is no change. So you can do it in two ways. Either you can formulate this way, formulate it as well, no change. Or if you don't say it, it means that there is no change. I can understand, okay? Now, this is what we do. And you can see that in this kind of morphological analysis, there is a lot of phonology going on in there. Okay? That's why we're going to say that it is phonologically based analysis. It's a morphological analysis that is phonology based. Okay? Because we're talking about pronunciations, we're talking about, okay, environments where things happen. Now, let's see the other type of base, okay, which is lexical. Lexical base. And this refers to ox and oxen, child, children, and the other example for brother, brothering. This kind of alternation going on in here, there is no way of okay, of providing the rule like that, okay, like we have seen above. But for a native speaker or somebody learning English, the only thing he has to remember is to remember that in this lexical item, ox, the plural is oxen. In this plural, and this word child, the plural is children. That's why when you started learning English, I guess the teachers, your teachers of English, never explain, don't tell you any explanation. They just tell you to remember it as such.
Yes.
So that's lexically based. It's based on lexicon. You have to remember that this word, the plural is oxen. This word child, the plural is children. Okay? It's lexical or lexicon based. Okay? And finally, the last one, which is morphological, purely morphological. And here we are talking about the stems. Okay, the stems. The stems like teeth and thieves. Okay? Now, you have it becomes the. Okay? It becomes the. Of course, here you have the plural s. What you have here is the plural s, thieves. Okay? What's the other word? Yeah, clothes. Okay? Clothes. Okay? The other example is clothed for singular. Clothes. When you say the plural s, you have to pronounce it the clothes. Okay? But I have to be careful here because there are some exceptions for this rule. Clothes, thieves. There are some other words that are similar, but there is no change in the stem. There is no change in the stem, like chief, chiefs. Okay? Chief, okay, chiefs, okay, chief, okay, chiefs. So here, there is some lexically conditioned in the sense that you have to remember that some words are exceptional. So look here, some words are exceptional. I don't tell you that this environment, phonological environment, is exceptional. I tell you that words are exceptional. So therefore, it is lexically conditioned. Some exceptions are lexically conditioned. Yes, because of the lexicon, because of the word, because of the vocabulary. There is nothing about the environment, the phonemic representation. There is nothing. The only thing you have to remember for this rule here is that for clothes, when you put the plural s, and thieves, when you put the plural s. So here's some morphological analysis, phonemic representation going on. But there are some exceptions like chiefs, that you have to remember as such. Because of the word itself, it is done this way. Okay? Lexically conditioned. Lexically conditioned. So this is what we mean by morphological analysis. Now, as a preparation, please, as a preparation for next classes, I'm going to talk about the affixes, what we mean by affixes. So you already understand that affixes, there are many different types. Okay, you can have the suffixes. Okay, you can have 4 categories, 4 types of affixes. You can have the suffixes. They are put at the end of the word, like commit, and then commitment. You can have prefixes, that is to say they are put at the beginning of the word, like and real, and then you put the prefix and real. And then you can have within the morpheme, infixes, we call them infixes. Okay, this doesn't exist in English, but you can have them in some other, yes, in other languages. Okay, for example, here there is efficace. It means strong in bottom, and then it becomes phonemic. Okay, to be strong. To be strong. That's the explanation of the word. Okay. Finally, the last one is what we call discontinuous. We call them discontinuous morphemes. And here we come to Arabic. Arabic is rich in this. Okay. For example, you have the root ketb. Ketb, that's the root. You don't add prefixes. You don't add suffixes. You don't add, okay, anything. But we call them discontinuous, okay, affixes. You add kataba. So look, you separate between ka and ta with a vowel. And then you separate between ta and ba with another vowel. Or you can say kitab. You look, discontinuous. You have one vowel in one slot, you add it there to separate between two consonants, and you add another vowel to separate between other consonants, like you have in here. Kitab. So look, this morpheme or this affix, we call it discontinuous because it is separated. You have one part of it here, and the other part is in here. And then katib, the same thing, okay? So you have discontinuous, you call them discontinuous, okay? Now this is the fourth category. Now let's go on to finish. Word coinage. Word coinage. So how do we coin new words? There are different ways how we coin new words, and we're going to come to the details in the next lecture. There is what we call borrowing in order to coin new words. Okay? Then we have derivation. That's what we have seen today, derivation. We derive using affixes. Or we can use compounding, middle-aged, for example. Middle-aged. Here you have compounding using a dash between two words. And finally, more examples in here. We can have more examples here that you can see and come back to later on. And that's it. Okay? Thank you very much.